Jesus, I surrender all to Him. I freely give. I will ever love and trust Him in His
The 6th of January, 1900, Volume 3. Confidence, the staircase to ascend to the divinity. This morning I received communion, and as I found myself together with Jesus, the Queen Mama was also there, and oh, marvel, I looked at the mother, and I could see her heart transmuted into baby Jesus. I looked at the son, and I could see the mother in the heart of the baby. In the meantime, I remembered that today is the Epiphany, and in the example of the Holy Magi, I was to offer something to baby Jesus, but I saw myself as having nothing to give him. So, in seeing my misery, the thought came to me of offering my body as myrrh, with all the sufferings of the 12 years in which I had been in bed, ready to suffer and to remain there as much longer as he pleased. As gold, the pain I feel when he deprives me of his presence, which is the most painful and sorrowful thing for me. As incense, my poor prayers, united to those of the Queen Mama, so that they might be more pleasing to baby Jesus. So I made the offering with full confidence that the baby would accept everything. Jesus seemed to accept my poor offerings with great pleasure. But that which he enjoyed the most was the confidence with which I had offered them. Then he said to me, "Confidence has two arms. With one it embraces my humanity, and it uses my humanity as a staircase in order to ascend to my divinity. With the other it embraces the divinity and draws celestial graces in torrents, in such a way that the soul remains all inundated within the divine being. When the soul is confident, she is certain to obtain what she asks. I let my arms be bound. I let her do whatever she wants. I let her penetrate even into my heart, and I let her take by herself that which she has asked from me. If I did not do so, I would feel myself in a state of violence." While he was saying this, many rivulets of liqueur, I call it liqueur, but I can't really tell what it is, came out from the breast of the baby and of the mother, which inundated my soul completely. Then the Queen Mother disappeared. After this, together with the baby, I went out into the vault of the heavens. I saw that his gracious face was sad, and I said to myself, "Maybe he wants milk, that is why he's sad." So I said to him, "Do you want to suckle from me, since the Queen Mama is not here?" But before doing this I became concerned that it might be the devil. So, in order to be reassured, I signed him several times with the cross, and I said to him, "Are you really Jesus the Nazarene, the second person of the Most Holy Trinity, Son of the Virgin Mary, Mother of God?" And the baby assured that he was. Therefore, being assured, I placed him to suckle from myself. The baby seemed to revive, assumed a merry appearance, and I saw that he was suckling part of those rivulets with which he himself had inundated me. And while he was doing this, I felt my heart being pulled, as it seemed that that milk which Jesus was drawing from me was coming out from it. Who can say what passed between me and baby Jesus? I have no tongue to be able to manifest it, no words to be able to describe it. End of the reading. The 6th of January 1901, Volume 4. Jesus communicates himself to the three Magi through love, through beauty, and through power. As I was outside of myself, I seemed to see the moment when the holy Magi arrived at the grotto of Bethlehem. As they arrived in the presence of the baby, he pleased to let the rays of his divinity shine externally, communicating himself to the Magi in three ways: through love, through beauty, and through power, in such a way that they remained enraptured and engrossed in the presence of little baby Jesus. So much so that if the Lord had not withdrawn the rays of his divinity internally again, they would have remained there forever, unable to move any more. Then as the baby withdrew his divinity, the holy Magi returned into themselves. They stirred themselves, stupefied in seeing an excess of love so great, because through that light the Lord had let them understand the mystery of the Incarnation. Then they stood up and offered their gifts to the Queen Mother, and she spoke at length with them. But I am unable to say everything she said. I can only remember that she inculcated into them strongly not only their own salvation, but also taking to heart the salvation of their peoples, having no fear even to lay down their lives to obtain the intent. After this I withdrew inside myself, and I found myself together with Jesus. He had wanted me to tell him something, but I saw myself so bad and confused that I would not dare to tell him anything. Seeing that I was not saying anything, he himself continued to speak about the holy Magi, telling me, by having communicated myself to the Magi in three ways, I obtained three effects for them, because I never communicate myself to souls uselessly. Rather, they always receive some profit for themselves. So, as I communicated myself through love, they obtained detachment from themselves. Through beauty, they obtained contempt for earthly things, and through power, their hearts remained all bound to me, and they obtained the bravery to lay down their blood and lives for me. Then he added, and you, what do you want? Tell me. Do you love me? How would you want to love me? Not knowing what to say as my confusion increased, I said, Lord, I would want nothing but you, and if you say to me, do you love me? I have no words to be able to manifest it. I can only say that I feel this passion, that no one may be able to prevail over me in loving you, and that I should be the first in loving you above everyone, and no one may be able to surpass me. But this does not content me yet. In order to be content, I would want to love you with your own love, so that I may be able to love you as you love yourself. Ah, yes, only then would my concerns about loving you cease. Content, one could say, with my nonsense. Jesus clasped me so tightly to himself that I could see myself transmuted in him, inside and out, and he communicated part of his love to me. After this, I returned inside myself, and it seemed to me that for as much love as I am given, so much do I possess my good, and if I love him little, I possess him little. End of the reading. The 6th of January 1902, Volume 4. Portentous effects of uniting our lives with that of Jesus. A few words about death. As I was in my usual state, after much waiting, my most loving Jesus came for a little while, and placing himself near me, told me, my daughter, one who tries to conform to my life in everything adds one more and distinct fragrance to everything I did in my life, in such a way as to perfume heaven and the whole church. And even the evil themselves feel this celestial fragrance flow. This is so true that all the saints are nothing other than many fragrances, and are that which most cheers the church and heaven, because they are distinct among themselves. Not only this, but if one tries to continue my life by doing what I did wherever he can, and where he cannot, at least with the desire and the intention, I keep it in my hands as if I were continuing my whole life in that soul, not as something past, but as if I were now living. This is a treasure in my hands, because as I double the treasure of everything I operated, I dispose it for the good of the whole of mankind. So would you not want to be one of these? I saw myself all confused, and did not know what to answer, and Jesus disappeared from me. But a little later he came back, and I also saw many people who greatly feared death. On seeing this, I said, "My lovable Jesus, it must be a defect in me, this not fearing death. I see that others fear it so much, while to me, instead thinking only that death will unite me with you forever, and will put an end to the martyrdom of my hard separation, the thought of death not only gives no fear, but is of relief. It gives me peace, and I make feast, disregarding all the other consequences which death brings with itself." And Jesus, "Daughter, in truth, that extravagant fear of dying is foolishness, when one has all my merits, virtues, and works as passport to enter into heaven, since I made a donation of it to everyone. Those who have added from their own then profit even more from this donation of mine. And with all this substance, what fear can one have of death? Rather, with this most safe passport, the soul can enter wherever she wants, and out of regard for her passport, everyone respects her and lets her pass. As for you, then, your not fearing death at all comes from your having dealt with me, and having experienced how sweet and dear is the union with the highest good. Know, however, that the most pleasing homage that can be offered to me is desiring to die in order to be united with me. This is the most beautiful disposition, in order for the soul to be purged and to pass straight on with no interval through the way of heaven." Having said this, he disappeared. The 6th of January 1904, Volume 6. The human race is all one family. When someone does some good work and offers it to God, the whole human family participates in that offering and is present to God as if all were offering it. Continuing in my usual state, blessed baby Jesus came, and after he placed himself in my arms and he blessed me with his little hands, he told me, "My daughter, since the human race is all one family, when someone does some good work and offers something to me, the whole human family participates in that offering and is present to me as if all were offering it. As for example, today as the Magi offered their gifts to me, I had all human generations present in their persons, and all participated in the merit of their good work. The first thing they offered to me was gold, and I in return gave them the intelligence and the knowledge of truth. But do you know which gold I want now from souls? Not material gold, no, but spiritual gold. That is the gold of their will, the gold of their affections, of their desires, of their own tastes, the gold of the whole interior of man. This is all the gold that the soul has, and I want it all for myself. Now it is almost difficult for the soul to give this to me without sacrificing and mortifying herself. And this is how myrrh, like electric wire, binds the interior of man, renders it more shining, and gives it the shades of multiple colours, giving all species of beauty to the soul. But this is not all. It takes someone who maintains the colours and the freshness always alive, which almost like fragrance and breeze blow from within the soul. It takes someone who offers and obtains greater gifts than the one he gives. It also takes someone who forces the one who receives and the one who gives to dwell in his own interior, keeping him in continuous conversation and in continuous commerce with himself. So, who does all this? It is prayer, especially the spirit of interior prayer, which knows how to convert into gold not only the internal works, but also the external works. And this is the incense. End of the reading. The 6th of January 1906, Volume 6. Prayer is music to the hearing of Jesus, especially if it is of a soul who is conformed to his will. Continuing in my usual state, my blessed Jesus came for just a little, and while I was praying, clasping my whole being, he told me, "My daughter, prayer is music to my hearing, especially when a soul is all conformed to my will, in such a way that nothing can be seen in her interior but a continuous attitude of life of divine will. With this soul, it is as if another God would come out and play this music for me. Oh, how delightful it is to find one who matches me and can render me divine honours. Only one who lives in my will can reach such a point, because all other souls, even if they did and prayed much, would always give me things and prayers that are human, not divine, and therefore they do not have that power and that attraction over my hearing." End of the reading. The 6th of January 1927, Volume 20. The soul who lives in the divine will is always equal to herself. The order of providence in the incarnation and in the manifestations of the holy Magi. I was doing my usual acts in the supreme volition, and my sweet Jesus came out from within my interior, and stretching out his arms to me, he hugged me, but clasping me so tightly to himself that I remained completely covered with Jesus. Then he said to me, "My daughter, I am not content if I do not see you completely covered with me, and so dissolved in me, as to no longer be able to recognize yourself in me, but only me in you." Then he added, "My daughter, one who lives in the divine will is always equal to herself. Her acts are symbolized by light, which diffuses equally to the back and to the front, to the right and to the left. At the most, if it contains greater intensity of light, it expands more, but it diffuses always equally in expanding the circumference of light around itself. Now, since the acts done in my will are symbolized by light, as the act of the creature enters my will, it embraces the past, the present, and the future. Not lacking the fullness of light, it expands everywhere and, all at once, it takes every one within the circumference of its unending light. Therefore no one, as much good as he may do, can say to one who lives in the divine fiat, 'I am like you,' but she alone can say, 'I am similar to the one who created me. Whatever he does, I do.' One is the light that invests us, one is the strength, one is the will." Then after this I was thinking about the holy Magi when they visited the little baby Jesus in the grotto of Bethlehem. And my always lovable Jesus told me, "My daughter, see the order of my divine providence. For the great portent of my incarnation, I chose and used a virgin, humble and poor, and the Virgin Saint Joseph as my custodian, who acted as a father to me, and who was so poor that he needed to work in order to sustain our lives. See how in the greatest works, and the mystery of the Incarnation could not be greater, we use people whose outward appearance attracts no attention from anyone, because dignities, sceptres, riches are always fumes which blind the soul and prevent her from penetrating into the celestial mysteries, in order to receive a great act of God and God himself. But in order to manifest to the peoples the coming of myself, word of the Father upon earth, I wanted and used royal authorities, learned and erudite men, so that by their authority they might diffuse the knowledges of the incarnate God, and eventually also impose themselves to the peoples. In spite of this, the star was seen by everyone, yet only 3 of them move, pay attention, and follow it. This says that among all, these alone possessed a certain dominion over themselves, which formed a little empty space in their interior. So beyond the appearance of the star, they felt my call, which echoed within their interior, and heedless of sacrifices, of gossip, of mockeries, because they were leaving for an unknown place and they had to hear much of it, disregarding everything and dominating themselves, they followed the star, united to my call, which resounded in their interior as more than a speaking star. It enlightened them, it attracted them, and said many things about the one whom they were to visit, and drunk with joy they followed the star. See then how in order to give the great gift of the Incarnation, it took a virgin who had no human will, who was more of heaven than of earth, and who was disposed to this great portent by a continuous miracle. So we had no need of external things, and of human appearances which might draw the attention of the peoples. However, in spite of this, also to manifest myself, I wanted men who had dominion over themselves and who would make a little space within their interior to let the echo of my call resound in it. But was not there surprise in seeing the star stop, not over a royal palace, but over a vile hovel? They did not know what to think, and convinced themselves that there was a mystery, not human but divine. When they animated themselves with faith, entered the grotto, and kneeling adored me, as they bent their knees, I revealed myself, and I let my divinity shine forth from my little humanity, and they recognized me as the King of Kings, the one who had come to save them. Immediately they offered themselves to serve me and to lay down their lives for love of me. But my will made itself known and sent them again into their region, to let them be the messengers of my coming upon earth in the midst of those peoples. See then how necessary dominion of oneself and emptiness of heart are, to let my call resound, and to be fitting for knowing the truth and for manifesting it to others. End of the reading.
All to Jesus I surrender, humbly at his feet I bow. Worldly pleasures all forsaken, take me, Jesus, take me now. I surrender all. I surrender all to thee, my blessed Savior. I surrender all.
The 6th of January 1928, Volume 23. How the Divine Will is Immense, and in issuing creatures to the light, It keeps them within itself like many little dwellings. The ingratitude of those who do not let it reign. Harmony between God and man. How he was to receive always from God in order to give to him always. I was feeling all abandoned in the divine volition. Its light invested me everywhere, and while I was doing my round in its acts, my adorable Jesus moved in my interior and told me, "My daughter, my will is immense, and as it issued the creatures to the light of the day, they remained in my will like many little dwellings formed in it, by which by right my volition was to have the regime and the carrying out of its life within each of these little dwellings. But while, out of its goodness and generosity, it gave the space and everything that was needed in order to form these little dwellings within itself, the creatures, with horrendous ingratitude, do not want to surrender the right to let my divine volition dwell within them. And with so many dwellings it allowed to be formed within itself. For as many as there are creatures, it has the sorrow of remaining without dwellings, because they do not let it enter to dwell within them. It happens to my will as would happen if someone wanted to form many dwellings in the sea or in the light of the sun. While the sea or the light of the sun give him the space to form these dwellings within them, they did not want to let either the water or the light of the sun have primacy in these dwellings, nor give them the field to dwell and to hold their first place of regime. If the sea and the light had reason, they would feel such sorrow that the sea would invest these dwellings with its waves, and knocking them down it would undo them and bury them in its bosom, and the light of the sun would burn them to ashes with its heat, so as to get rid of these unworthy and ungrateful dwellings that had denied its entrance. Yet neither the sun nor the sea has given them life, but only space. Yet on the other hand, my will has given life and space within itself to these dwellings of creatures, because there is not one point in which it is not present, nor life that does not come from it. Therefore the sorrow of my will, because of those who do not let it dominate within themselves, is immense and incalculable. Feeling these lives palpitating within itself, forming their very heartbeat, and remaining outside like a stranger, as if they did not belong to it, is affront and monstrosity from those who do not let it reign. And it is so great that they would deserve life imprisonment and destruction. My daughter, not doing my will seems something trivial to creatures, but it is an evil so great and an ingratitude so awful that there is no evil similar to it. After this I was continuing my round in the divine theatre. As I arrived at the point in which God created man, I thought to myself, why did he rejoice so much in creating him that he did not do with all the other things he created? And my beloved Jesus, moving in my interior, told me, "My daughter, in creating the whole creation with such order and harmony, we gave of our own and were to receive nothing from it. But in creating man, while giving of our own, we gave him the capacity to give us our very gifts as goods belonging to himself, in such a way that we were to give always, so much so that a contest was to arise between him and us, we in giving, and he in receiving, he in giving to us, and we in lavishing our gifts yet more abundantly upon him. This giving and receiving, receiving and giving, opened the feasts, the games, the joys, the conversation between creator and creature. So, in seeing the littleness of the creature celebrate with our supreme height, amusing itself, rejoicing, conversing with us, we felt such joy, such emphasis of love in creating man, that all other created things seemed nothing to us compared to the creation of man. And if all of them seemed beautiful to us and worthy of our works, and our love ran in all created things, it was because they were to serve us, to abound in gifts toward man, and from him we awaited the requital of love of all created things. Therefore, all our joy and glory was centralized in man, and in creating him, we placed between him and us harmony of intelligence, harmony of light, harmony of words, harmony of works and of steps, and in the heart, harmony of love. So something like many electric wires of harmony passed from us into him, through which we descended into him and he ascended to us. This is why we rejoice so much in creating man, and the sorrow he gave us in withdrawing from our will was so great, because he broke all these harmonies, changed our feast into sorrow for us and for himself, destroyed our highest designs, deformed our image that we had created in him. In fact, our divine will alone had the virtue of maintaining our work beautiful, with all the harmonies wanted by us. Once our will is removed, man is the most vile and disagreeable being of all creation. Therefore, my daughter, if you want all your senses to harmonize with us, never go out of my will. If you want to receive always from your Creator and open the feast with us, let it alone be your love, be your life, your all. End of the reading. The 6th of January 1929, Volume 25. Crowd of people who did not reach the proper stature because they went out of the inheritance of the divine fiat. Wherever the divine fiat is present, there is the communicative strength of the divine goods. I continue in my usual abandonment in the divine fiat, and while I was following its acts, I saw a crowd of people, all of small stature, malnourished, sickly, scrawny, and some of them wounded. In this crowd there was neither childlike freshness, nor the beauty of the young age, nor the dignity of the mature man. They seemed to be an odd assortment of people without order, starving, without sufficient foods, and if they ate, they were never satiated. How much pity this great crowd aroused, that seemed to be almost the whole entire world. I did not know who they were, nor the meaning of their nature, that none of them had reached their proper stature. And my beloved Jesus, sighing, came out from within my interior and told me, "My daughter, what an unhappy crowd! It is nothing other than the great crowd that went out of the paternal inheritance given to them by their celestial Father. Poor children without paternal inheritance. They do not have their lands in which to live safely. They do not have sufficient foods in order to nourish themselves, and are forced to live of thefts and robberies, and of foods without substance. Therefore it is almost difficult for them to grow to proper stature, because their members do not have sufficient strength to develop, and so they are scrawny, infirm, starving, without ever becoming satiated. Everything they take is not suitable for their growth, because they are not foods suitable and established for them, nor belonging to their inheritance. My daughter, the inheritance given by my celestial Father to this crowd of people was my divine will. In it they were to find food, in order to grow to proper stature, balsamic air, to be rendered healthy and strong. That was to portray on their faces the freshness of a child, the beauty of the young age, and the dignity and grace of a mature man. There was no good that this inheritance did not possess, of which man was to be the master, and have at his disposal all the goods he wanted, in the soul and in the body. So as man went out of the inheritance of divine will, he no longer found things at his disposal. He was no longer master, but servant, and he is forced to live of hardships. How can he grow to proper stature? This is why I await with so much love the crowd of those who must live in our inheritance of the divine fiat. It will form for us the beautiful crowd, with proper stature, beautiful and fresh, that will be fed with nourishing foods, that will render them strong and developed, and they will form all the glory of our creative work. Our sorrow is great in looking at this crowd, unhappy and deformed, and in our sorrow we repeat, "Ah, our work did not come out of our creative hands, as infirm with our beauty and freshness, but it was a delight to merely look at it. Even more it enraptured us, so beautiful it was." But while we say this, our love swells and wants to overflow outside, and it wants to put our divine volition on the way, to make it rain in the midst of creatures, so as to make us restore beautiful and gracious our work, just as it came out of our creative hands. Then I continued to think about the supreme fiat, and oh, how many things I comprehended about it. I seemed to see it, all majesty, all light, pouring out happiness, strength, sanctity, love. And these outpourings formed endless seas that wanted to pour themselves over creatures. But alas, they would not give a thought to receiving them, and these seas would remain suspended above their heads. But while my mind was immersed in the divine fiat, my sweet Jesus, moving in my interior, told me, "My daughter, wherever the divine will is present, there is the communicative strength of all the divine goods, and like mighty waves, our outpourings of happiness, of light, of strength, etc., flow over the creature who possesses it, and it has the virtue of changing the nature of the hardest, the most painful, the most bitter things. Wherever my divine fiat is present, the hardest things become so very soft. Pains change into joys, bitternesses into sweetnesses. The earth becomes heaven, the sacrifices, conquests. Your example is more than enough to convince you of what I am telling you. See, if my will were not present in you, nailed as you are, inside a bed for so many years, without seeing and enjoying either the sun or the air or any pleasure of the earth, even more you can say that you do not know it, you would have been the unhappiest creature. Oh, how hard and bitter your state would have been to you. Yet my divine fiat, possessing the source of happiness, pouring itself over you and flowing even in the marrow of your bones, communicates to you its happiness, and with its strength it puts all evils to sleep for you, and renders you happy. And if you knew how content I am in seeing you happy, and then add that it is seeing you happy, not in a state of pleasure, of amusement, but confined in a bed. This enraptures me, it makes me go into fidgets of love, it draws me so much to you, and in my delirium of love I say to you, O prodigy of my divine fiat, that renders my daughter happy in the state that the world would have cried out as unhappiness, misfortune, and maybe never before seen and understood. Yet, with my divine will, she is the happiest of creatures, the most peaceful, the dominator of herself, because inside of her flows the vein of the happiness of my fiat, that knows how to convert all things into joys and happinesses without end. My daughter, to see the creature happy is my only contentment, and since what renders her unhappy is the human volition, once this is removed, all the unhappinesses end, nor do they have any more reason to exist. But what makes all human unhappinesses die is my will alone. Before it, all evils feel themselves dying. My will is like the sun that rises in the morning, that has the virtue of dispelling the darkness of the night. Before the light, darkness dies, nor has any right to exist any more. So it is with my divine will. End of the reading. The 6th of January 1933, Volume 31. God hides himself in the creature who works with all her acts in the divine will. Gratitude that he feels for who lets him produce his life. Rights of both parties. The little ship. I was doing my round in creation in order to follow the acts that the divine will had done in it, and it seemed to me that each created thing gave me entrance in order to receive my act and put it in cortege and in exchange for the divine will that they possessed as actor and conservator of created things. Now while I did this, the celestial little baby made his brief little visit, and he told me, "My daughter, one who does the divine will, in doing her acts, pours herself again into it. There is no particle of her being that does not take a place in the Supreme Being. And then all that God has created, all that he has done and will do, being all enclosed in my volition as one single act, repours itself completely over the act of the creature in a way that her act remains filled, embellished, and surrounded by all that my will has done and will do, so much so that one sees all the divine acts impressed, fused, and surrounded in the act of the creature. When my will works as much in our divinity as in the human act, it does not know how nor want to detach one of its acts from another act, but to unite them all together and form the new act that it wants to do. One can say that we re-pour over the creature all our divine being with all our acts. We hide ourselves in her, we wall ourselves in, while we leave ourselves in our immensity and interminable power that we are. Therefore our happiness remains redoubled on the part of the creature, because she has given us the occasion of bilocating our life together with our acts, and we receive the glory, the honour, the love of our own life and of all our acts on the part of one who lets herself be possessed by our will. It happens to us as to the sun, that when from the heights of its sphere it seems that it gives only light, but that is not true. Together with its light it gives all that it possesses. And this is so true that one sees the earth flowering with so many varieties of colours, varieties of sweetness, of flavours. Who has given so much beauty, so many substances, so many colours? The light only? Ah, no. It is because the light has given the substances the properties that the light possesses. One can say that the earth is rich, embellished by the properties that the sun possesses. But while the sun gives, it loses nothing of what it possesses. Oh, if the sun had reason, how happier, more glorified it would feel for the great good that it does to the earth. For us, reproducing our life, our acts in our beloved creature, is happiness, and we feel ourselves as grateful to her, because she has given us the field of making use of our communicative power to reproduce ourselves in her. So I, in hearing this, thought to myself, and if there were sin, passions, how can the creature receive this great good? And Jesus added, Blessed daughter, When the soul gives herself to the mercy of my will, it has the virtue of making the life of evil vanish. There is no sin or passions that does not feel itself given death more than by a deadly sword. On the contrary, they die by themselves. As my will reigns in the soul, so they themselves lose life. For evil, it is like frost to the plants. It parches them, withers them, and makes them die. It is like light to darkness, that as the light appears, the darkness disappears and dies. Rather, one does not even know where it has gone. My will is like heat to cold. The cold dies under the virtue of the heat. If the frost, light, and heat have the virtue of making plants, darkness, and cold die, even more my divine will has the virtue of making evils die completely. What's more, if the soul does not let herself be always dominated by my will, then because it does not always reign, it cannot communicate all the goods, nor convert the whole ensemble of the creature into divine life. And where the divine life is lacking, evil arises. And it can happen, as to the plants, when the strength of the frost withdraws. The plants, although with difficulty, begin to become green again. If the light withdraws, the darkness arises again. If the heat withdraws, the cold acquires its life again. Here is the reason for the great necessity of doing my will always, always, and of living in it, if you want to banish all evils and uproot even the roots of passions. More so, since my divine volition wants to always give to the creature, yet in order to give it is on the lookout to see how much she works in its will, because every act that she does in it acquires a divine right. So, however many acts she does, so many rights she acquires in the sea of my fiat, and it acquires as many rights over the creature. These rights of both parties render them owners, God and the poor creature. And my will bilocated and enclosed in the soul, forasmuch as she is capable of enclosing, since it wants to always give, brings her to navigate in the immense sea of its volition in the depth of the soul. One can say that it makes of her its little ship, in order to go on vacation in its immense sea of its volition, and according to how she disposes herself and works, so she encloses new doses of divine will. Therefore I want you always in it, so you will give me the right of always being able to give to you, and you of always receiving. End of the reading. There are no more readings today. Have a blessed day.